Um, Hello. So today we'll be doing continuing the Python functions and then I'll introduce some questions and then we'll just go through the code for these questions. So for the first problem, um the goal of the problem is to create a program that computes the average of a collection of values entered by a user. So then so in this problem, we're gonna code it in Python and we're gonna get input from you and enters zero, their values will be provided and that the program displayed. So coding this problem is basically one, we need to get input. Two, find if zero is found. I mean, yeah, fine. I mean, exit if zero is found, and three, calculate and output. So these are the specific steps that we need to do to do the problem. So let's start. Oh, here. Okay, so yeah, this is what we need to do to solve this problem. So then we'll do this in Python. So to do this, first we write a function. So in Python, again, to write a function, you add def and then you do the function name. So here we're calculating the average. So let's call the function calculate average. And then now we're first collecting input. So to get input, we need to, first we need to say what the program is going to do to the user so that the program is more user friendly. So to do that, we're going to print enter integers to calculate the average and enter 0 to stop. So to solve this problem, we need some variables to keep track of all the numbers that the user entered and also to keep track of the total numbers entered so that because to calculate an average, um, I think your idea is correct for your idea of the function, but again, we're gonna you include user input, so the function will be a little bit different than that. Okay, so yeah, we need to find um to calculate the average, there are two important variables that we need the sum of all the numbers that the use of all the numbers divided by the total number of the numbers. So then we'll initialize these two variables so that we can calculate the average in the end. So we have a total variable and we have a count variable. And then next, we need to do a while loop because the user can input as many values as they want until they enter zero. And the best way to do this is through a while loop. So we'll just keep running the same code over and over again until the user decides that they don't want to add any more numbers. So to do this, we'll do a while true. And then first we need to ask the user for their input. So what we do is um, So then this will be the input. But then entered in the form of a string. So what we need to do is check if it's not a string. I mean an integer. So how to do this is we do this function. I mean this if statement. So what this does is checking if the value entered is a digit. And then if it's not a digit, what we need to do is we need to print another statement saying that the input that the user did is not valid. So what we do is we print, and then we need to add continue under, and what continue does is it goes to the next loop in the for loop and it skips all the code underneath because the user entered an invalid integer, so we don't need to add anything to total or count, and we just want to continue and run the loop again until the user inputs a valid integer. So next, otherwise, if the digit that the user entered is an integer, what we do is we convert the input into an integer. And then next, remember that the user that one of the parts of the program is that if the user entered 0, then that would be the stopping point. So what we do is we do an if statement, and if number is 0, we need to end the program. So there are two situations if number is 0. First, if nothing was inputted, and then we have to tell the user that there was an error, or otherwise, if the count isn't 0 and the user had inputted other numbers before, then we need to calculate the average and print it. So to do this, we first check if count is equal to 0. And if count is equal to 0, that means the user had an error, so we're going to print error, the first value. That'll be the end. But otherwise, we need to calculate the average. So what we do is average equals the total divided by the count. Because as I said before, average is the total numbers divided by the total the total of the sum of the numbers divided by the total number of numbers. And then we print the average of the entered. And this syntax may be a little bit weird. So there's an F in front to say that there will be a float printed for the average. And then this is the average. So it's not actually a string, it's the variable that will be put inside. So then this will print the average. By writing F in the front, it tells the program that there will be a float variable that will be printed alongside the print statement. And then after all of this, no matter if the count is 0 or not, we need to break the program because after the user enters 0, that means the program ended. So that will break the for loop and exit out of the for loop and finish this function. And then the last situation in this loop is that the user entered a valid number. And what we want to do now is we want to add this number to total, and we want to add um we want to add 1 to count because count is keeping track of the total number of numbers. So then we can add 1. And that'll be this program finished. So to test the program, we can just run Mm, here. So that should be this function. So then moving on, the next problem that we'll do is um okay. I think we need to do this outside. Okay. So to test, sorry, the calculate average was inside the function, so it would have been like a recursive function, and that's why it wasn't being called. So to okay, so now we can try the program. So first, let's see if the zero part works. Yeah. So if we entered zero, then the program will print that the first value entered cannot be zero, no average can be computed because the user never inputted the proper value. So to try again, we can also test like some random numbers. Then when we're done, we click zero, then it'll print the average. So that's how this program works. So are there any questions about this? Okay. Moving on, the next question will be to find a discount table. So in this question, there's a retailer who is selling some discontinued products, and the retailer would like to help its customers determine the reduced price of the merchandise by having a printed discount table on the shelf that shows the original prices and the prices after the discount has been applied, and write a program that uses a loop to generate this table showing the original price, the discount price, and the new price for purchases. And make sure that all of the prices are rounded to two decimal places. So what we want to do in this problem is first have a separate this into functions to make it easier. So the three functions that we want to have are a discount function, discount function, or a discount single to function. And this will take care of any situation where um oh yeah. Okay, so yeah, this problem. Okay, so this is the problem. And then the steps for this problem are, so first we have the inputted table. So then the steps are to, we need to loop through the given array, apply the discounts, and then print the new prices. Okay. So for this problem, so let's start on our first function. So first we write this function. Sorry. We write this function because this is how the function, because the sale is 60%. So remember we call discount equals 0.6 because that's the given value. And then we also have the prices, and this will be an array. So while we're in this function, we need to loop through the array. So we can write a for loop for price in prices. And what this for loop does is it goes through price is each object in prices. So like for example, if prices was an array like 1, 3, 4, 7, 8, when the price loops through it, it'll be like price will be 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Be each of these values. So that's what price is. So that's what that for loop does. And then what we want to do is new price equals price times discount, because that is the new price that we want to add in our arrays. And then we want to print prices. And what this does is the percent dot 2f may look a little funky, but what this does is it rounds the price to 2 decimals because that was part of the problem. And then how you do this is you add a percent and then a period, and then 2f means that the price will go to the two float values to the right of the decimal, and then we add percent price to say that we're rounding the price variable. And then we also want to print the old price, so then the old price, the discount price is and this does the same thing, but instead of price, we have new price. Okay. And then the other function that we are going to have to write is the discount single function. So what this is, if there's only one, and this one just adds an extra line. What this does, if there's only one value instead of prices, that it will print this one variable. So what we want to write in the discount single function is price equals price times discount again. And then we want to return this new price. So again, we want to round the new price to 2 decimal places. So we'll do this again. Percent dot 2f dot format. And this will return the value. So when you call the discount single value, function, it will return the discounted price of this original function. Okay, and then finally we have the discount single to function. What this function does is we're um doing a different this one will finally do the second discount. So this one will be yeah. I think these are just two separate these functions both do the same thing, but they're just two different ways of rounding the decimals. So if you want to round it with the float method, you would do it this way, but if you want to use the other method, you can also round it this way. Okay, so then now that we finished the functions, we actually want to run it. So to do this, it's similar to the first function where we're going to ask for input from the user. So we're going to have a numbers array for the user to add all the numbers they want to add to. Then we're going to have a count. Then we're going to make another while loop. So this one will be similar where if the user enters 0, the program will break the for loop. So we'll have to account for that in the while function. So in this while loop, the number is equal to, and we want to make it a float because the number that the user inputs might not be a perfect integer. So instead of like the first function where we made the number an int, we want to make it a float this time. And then we have, and we want to break the for loop. But otherwise, we want to add number to numbers. And then outside of the while loop, we want to actually call this function. And remember, we don't need to add the discount because the discount's already chosen. And it's already made in the function at 0.6. So then if we run it, I'm like, and then we can see this. And we can also do this with the values that they gave in the problem. So we have 4.95, 0.95, 14.95, 19.95, 24.95. Then 0 to finish, and then it'll have this. And to make the problem more user-friendly, like the problem before, we can also tell the user what this program is going to do. So we can write print this program, or please enter the prices of all your goods. The program will calculate the discounted price. And then again, to add spacing in the line and the console, we want to add another print statement, and then instead of just having an input, we can write enter the item. To the price of the item. And then now when you run this, the user can understand more clearly. Enter 0, 1 to quit. And then let's just stop this and then let's see. Now it makes much more sense to the user when they're actually using the program, because otherwise the user might not know what is going on in the program. And then once we quit. And notice how even though this number has like 6 decimal places after the code rounds each one off to 2 decimal places, which is important because money goes to 2 decimal places. Okay, so the next problem is admission price. Okay, so what this problem is asking is the admission price at a zoo determines the price of admission based on the age of the guest. So, for example, guests that are 2 years of age and less are admitted without charge. Children between 3 and 12 cost 14. Seniors that are over the age of 65 are 18, and everybody else is $23. So the program asked to create a system that will determine the price of the admission. And so what we need to do is it says create a program that begins by reading the ages of all the guests in a group from the user with one age entered on each line. And then the user will enter a blank line to indicate that there are no more guests in the group. And then your program should display the admission costs for the group with an appropriate message. And similarly to the last problem, the cost should be displayed using 2 decimal places. Okay, to start out this problem, we need to get input from the user again. So how do we do that? To get input from the user, we're going to again add an input function. So unlike the first 2 while loops, another way to do the while loops is to initialize it outside and then have a while line doesn't equal something instead of doing the while true part. So let me show you how this works. So to do this, we set line to input. Then next, we set the total to be 0 because um we need to again keep track of the cost and add it all together to be able to finally print at the end. And then the while loop will look at different. Instead of being a while true loop, we can have a while line doesn't equal this loop. And what this does is when the user finally doesn't enter anything into the line, then the program will return, the while loop will end. So this is another way of doing basically the same thing as doing a while true loop, but instead of a break statement, the break statement is basically included in the while loop over here. Okay, so inside the while loop, what we need to write is age equals, and then we just write each condition. Remember, depending on the age, the ticket price will be added. So if the age is greater than or equal to 65, total will add $18 because the cost for seniors 65 and over costs 18. and then we add an else if statement because we don't want to add the next age include, like if the age is greater than or equal to 65, we don't want to include it again in the prices. So then else if the age is above 12, that'll be the other guess, then total will be $23. And then else if age is greater than or equal to 3, then total is $14. And that will be it because children 0 and 2 between the age of 0 and 2 have a price of $0. Okay, so then after all these if statements are called, we need to add this line again because this was we need to get another input of another age. And then the program is basically done. So then we want to print. We're gonna print this total is this will again round the decimal to 2 places. When we run this program, I can add some random ages. And then if we press enter, then it'll say the total price. And we can double check this by doing the math ourselves. So the first age is 22, which would be within this range, so it's 23. 18 is again 23, so it's 46. And then 34 is also 23, and 58 is 23 and 13. All of these are 23 besides 95. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 23, which is 184. And then the last price is 14. So oh sorry, 184, and the last price is 18. So that'd be 184 plus 18, which is 202. And we can also try again with the ages like less than or equal to 3. That'll add another range. So this price should be 0. This price should be 14. This one should be 23. This one should be 23, and this one should be 18. So 46 plus 18 is 62, and then we add 14, and that is 78. So does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So moving on, our next question is a number guess game. So in this problem, what we want to do is we're going to write a loop that is 6 times. That'll take user input and then convert the user input to an integer. and then check whether the user input is equal to the mystery number, and if they are equal, the user ends and will quit the loop, and if it's not, we can print some useful messages to help the user, and if they are not equal and the user guessed above 6 times, then we'll run the program again, and if more than 6 times, then the user loses. Okay, so to write this program, we need to import rand int because we want to generate a random number for the user to try to guess. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to import a package. So we're going to import random rand int, and the rand int function generates random integers. Arrange. So first we'll get the mystery number. Mystery is equal to rand int 100. And what this does is we get a mystery number, and then the rand int function just generates a number in the range of whatever the two values are put into this function. So then we're gonna print to the user what the program is going to do and how the game works. So how to do this is we need to add a times value. And the good thing about adding a times variable is because if we want to give the user more guesses in another program to make the game like harder and give the user less guesses, then we won't have to go through the whole program and change every times variable. Instead, we can just change this variable instead of going through the program and changing 6 each time. Or if we wanted to make the game easier, we could also make times bigger. So then percent this module line again is a stand-in for this because you can't just add a variable into a string that is going to be printed. Okay, so next we're gonna have to do a for loop because in for loops, unlike while loops, we're gonna use them when we know the amount of times we want to loop through something. And in this situation, we know exactly how many times we want to loop through and do each case because we know that how many guesses the user has. So then what we have is a for loop looks like this for I in range times. So I will be the value that is iterated. So, and then times is a number. So for example, times is 6 here. So in this for loop, I will be equal to 0 and then 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5. So that's what I is. So then this is a for loop where I will be 6 different values, which is why that works. So we're again gonna get user input. So user equals so now we're getting input from the user. So then if the user, we have a few situations to go through. We need to first check if the user is equal to the mystery, and if that's the case, then the user wins. Otherwise, we need to check if the number is greater or smaller to give the user a hint. So first, let's do the easiest case, if user is equal to mystery. Then all we have to do is we have to print that the user won. So print and then break. Otherwise, if the user is greater than mystery, then we need to print that the user's input is too big. And then we also need to print to let them know how many times they have left. And we need to add times minus 1 minus I because times will go through each the way times iterates, it doesn't start at 1, it starts at 0. So then, for example, if when times is 0, the program will read 0, but we're thinking of it as round 1. So then it has to be 6 minus 0 minus 1. So when the user fails the first time, it'll print that the user has 5 times left. Okay, and then lastly, we need to do the same thing, but if the user's input is too small, so then we'll do this. And this code may seem a little bit redundant because we added this and this twice, this line twice. So instead of putting it inside the if statements, we can just put it outside. And the reason that this works is because if the user got the correct number, the program is gonna break and it's not gonna run through the rest of the code. So then we can just add this on the outside because the only situation where this code would be run is if the user did not win. Okay, then lastly, if the user did not guess it right, we need to add a lose statement. So to do that, we need to check. To do that, we need to add a flag. Oh. Then once the user won, then we also need to set flag to be equal to true. And then what we can do is if not flag. And what this does, the only way flag can turn true is if the user won and it prints you win. Otherwise, we need to print you lose. If you just printed you lose outside the loop, then it would print that no matter what. And we don't want to do that because we don't want to print you lose to the user if they won. And another way to improve upon this problem is if similarly to how we did before, we need to make sure that the user entered a valid integer. So what we can do is um wow, similar to above, inside the for loop we can add a while loop that makes sure that the user enters a valid integer. So what we can write is this again. So while um while- when it's not input, instead this time it's a user variable. While not that is digit, then we need to write user is equal to input this. And then outside of this, after the while loop, we can write user equals int user. And then this will make sure that the user inputs a valid integer. And another thing to take this to the next level is we need to make sure that the user enters value within the range. So then we could also do while not user or int user is less than 1 or then we need to again enter that. Okay, so then we can try to run this. So let's try. Your input is too small, so let's try 59. It's too small still, so maybe 80. It's too big, so 75, 74. Too small, 27. Too small, so it's either 78 or 79. Let's see. Oh no. So yeah, we lost. But that is the gist of the program. And yeah. We can also print if the number is right or not. I mean the correct number, so maybe we should also print the correct number was, and then let's see. So let's see otherwise if it works. So let's see, -1. Yeah, if it's outside the range, notice the program will not let us enter that till that. So our input is too big, so 23. Still too big, 10. Well, 15. Too small, 18. Too big, and then it'll print you lose the number with 17. Okay, so moving on to our last problem for today. The last problem will be a prime number checker and generator. So this problem will be a little bit longer. So what this problem is going to do is we want to make a prime number checker and generator that creates a program with two functionalities to first ask the user to enter a number and check if it's prime, or allow the user to specify a range and generate all prime numbers within that range, and then implement these functionalities in separate functions and let the user choose which they want it used. So this might be a little bit more complicated, so I might just go over the prime number checker and give a hint on the prime number generator that you guys can do as homework. So just for the prime number checker, it's pretty simple. What we do is we want to set a for loop and then check. I mean, we just need to, yeah, set a for loop and make sure that every single number within the range of half of the prime number, I mean, not that prime number, if the number is not divisible by each number within that range, then it's prime. Otherwise, the number is not prime. So let me show you. So because this this problem asked this functions and ask if the user wants the functionality to is make a function. You want a parameter because the parameter will be the number that the user inputted, so that will be number. And then if we check it, is any number that is 1 or less cannot be a prime number no matter what. So we just want to get that out of the way so it doesn't cause error the rest of the problem. So otherwise, we want to set for loop for I in range. And what this does is it checks for the number I in the range of the half of the number plus 1 because that's the biggest possible number that the number can be divided by. So then we just need to check within this range. And then number. And what this does is for number if number percent I is equal to 0, this is checking this is the modulus function and that's I. So the only way that number is divisible by I is if number mod I is 0. So then if number mod I is 0, that means that the number is divisible by something that is not 1, which means that the number is in fact a composite number and not prime, so then we want to return false. And the reason it's outside the for loop is because we need to check every single value, and if every single value is the number divided by every single value is not divisible by that value and doesn't return 0 mod I, then it's prime, so then it returns true. So then lastly, I'll give some hints on the prime number generator. So to do this, what we need to do is it's pretty simple because we already have the is prime function. We can just write a for loop within a for loop for the range of the prime numbers that the user inputs. So we would have a function with 2 parameters, start and end. And then inside the function, what you want to do is you want to generate a list. So primes, you want to make a for loop for num in range start end, and then all you have to do is check if that number use the is prime function and do is prime num. And if that returns true, then you can add it to the list. And if it returns false, don't add it to the list and then just return the list at the end. So that's how you would do the generate prime function. And lastly, you want to write a prime program that actually does this. And what you want basically in this function, it's pretty simple, and you want a while loop that gives the user the right to choose an option after getting input from the user. And then inside this loop, you want to print the different options and then get a choice variable from the input function. And then after that, depending on the choice, you can generate the is prime function or the generate primes function and then check that. And then build up on that with like what I taught before in this class, with all the different user possibilities and make sure that they're user friendly. So then, and then you can run the program. So then that will be all for today's class. Thank you for coming, and I hope you have a good weekend and a good Thanksgiving break. And I hope you can finish the generate primes question for homework. Thank you.